Hi folks, now that I've had some rest, this is my wrap up for the US 24-hour readathon. In total, if my maths is right, I read 994 pages, which consisted of a novella, a novel, 2 graphic novels, 4 short stories, and the second half of a non-fiction book. So I think that I did really well. So here's a wrap up of what I read. A lot of it was actually digital on my Kindle. So the first thing I completed was Poison. You can see that. Oh, that, yeah, it probably looks dodgy. But Poison or Protect by Gail Carriger. So yeah, that is her newest novella. She started I think she started self-publishing novellas, mostly in her steampunk supernatural universe. So Poison or Protect follows an adult, it's a romance novella following the adult Prashaya from the Finishing School series. She's had 4 husbands. They have all died in mysterious circumstances, and she's kind of bitter, and she goes to a house party. She has a job to do. She has 2 jobs to do. One which the Duke that the house party is being hosted by knows about, and one that he doesn't. And she meets a captain from Scotland, and it's romantic, it's fun, it's a little bit naughty. And yeah, so that was fun, and I enjoyed that, and so I finished that. There was also some really nice comments on female friendship and the importance of female friendship from the perspective of a character who had avoided female friendship, even though she'd observed it before. So yeah, that was Poison or Protect by Gail Carriger. The second thing I finished was Letters to Tiptree, edited by Alisa Krasnostein and Alexandra Pierce. This is my non-fiction. I read 163 pages of it to finish it off. I love this book, and not just because I know the editors. So of what I read in the actual readathon, the final letter to Tiptree in the first section was actually a poem by Rachel Swirsky, which I found very beautiful and very hopeful. But what I really enjoyed most was the letters that were reprinted. There were letters between Alice Sheldon and Ursula Le Guin after Alice's double life as Tiptree was found out. They were so warm and beautifully written, and I just loved them. And then I actually finished the book with tears in my eyes, because the final 2 things in the book were letters from the editors to Tiptree, and you know, they're both editors are women that I know and who have had quite an effect on my reading life the last few years. And yeah, I just kind of teared up a bit because so beautiful, so warm, and so emotional. So that's Letters to Tiptree, which I finished off. And I followed that up with another comic, another digital thing, which was a comic, which was the 4 Doctors. Sorry, I'm just trying to bring it up. 4 Doctors by oh, that didn't work very well. Sorry. Yeah, 4 Doctors by Paul Cornell and illustrated by Neil Edwards. So this was the comics event from last year. It was enjoyable. I like most of Paul's work, and I love Doctor Who, but I found that particular paradox that was the plot line really quite confusing. And the characters, there are a couple of companions that are comics only companions that I've had no experiences with before, and I didn't feel I knew them well enough to really get into this comic, but it was still enjoyable because it was Doctor Who. So then I read my novel, which I just ploughed through, which was Who Killed Sherlock Holmes, which is by Paul Cornell. So more Paul Cornell. This is the 3rd book in the Shadow Police series. Yeah, and I love that series so much. Like, the first 2 books are amazing, and this was just as much fun. There was once again, a twist I didn't see coming. I never see Paul's twists coming. Also, finally, in this book, we get some answers to questions that have been asked in the previous books about the past and about the former team and the leader of the sort of head honcho who has kind of been part of the team, which is Rebecca, I can't remember her name now, but Lofthouse, I think, who's the like chief of police person who's in charge of their team. Part of the first two books is that she knows that there's something supernatural going on, but she's got no memories of it, or she's not telling them about it. And in this, she went looking for answers. I really liked the fact that it dealt with the mental health ramifications of what happened to Quill, in the previous book, that he went through a very traumatic experience, and there were some very serious mental health consequences to that in this book, and it dealt with it. I think it dealt with it well, in that there were very serious consequences, and he's not going to get better straight away. And it also dealt with how difficult it is for the people around him to deal with as well. There was also, considering the diversity of these books, there was also the introduction of a trans character. It's just a side character who I suspect probably won't really pop up much in the future either. But it was, another aspect, because this is, if you say this is a team of 5, only one of that team of 5 is a white male. 2 of them are women and 2 of them are black men, and one of said black men is gay. So yeah, I really like the diversity of the Shadow Police books, so I really recommend picking them up. It starts with London Falling, followed by The Seven Streets, and of course this, which is Who Killed Sherlock Holmes. So I really enjoyed reading that. Then I went in a completely different direction and read The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, Volume 1, Squirrel Power. So this is a Marvel comic, and it's about a girl who has squirrel blood, and so she has the strength, how would you describe it? The strength of a squirrel and the powers of a squirrel if a squirrel was human size, so it's the proportionate strength. And she can also talk to squirrels and call, the squirrels to help her, and it's hilarious and it's fun and it's silly and I love it, so I'm probably going to keep going with it. So it's The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, which is by Ryan North and illustrated by Erica Henderson. And then I finished up by reading 4 short stories out of Uncanny Magazine issue 10. So the first one that I read was Ye Highlands and Ye Lowlands by Shauna Maguire. I quite liked this story, and maybe it was because I just finished the Letters to Tiptree earlier in the day, but I actually thought it reminded me very much of Tiptree stories. The lyrical title reminded me of the titles that Tiptree used to use. Also, the story was very much the consequences of human exploration. It's it flips back and forwards between the present and the past, and it involves having scientists having found a way to create a portal to another world somewhere across the universe, and they're conducting experiments and looking for all geological and biological information and stuff, and they meet aliens and they talk to them, but there's a mistranslation and things go very, very, very wrong. And I felt that consequence of human exploration was something that was very Tiptree, and the complete lack of hope. The characters that this is from their perspective, they don't have any hope. Everything's gone wrong and there's no hope left. So I thought that was very Tiptree. So it was a very interesting story and I quite enjoyed it. The second one I read was The Sound of Salton Sea by Kat Howard. This was probably my favourite of the 4 that I read. And it was spooky. There were ghosts and bone horses. What I really liked about it was that the entire story was saturated with ritual in the way that the people on this island dealt with the ghosts that came to visit once a year. and the bone horses that came with those ghosts. There were rituals for everything. There was funerary rituals. There was rituals to keep the ghosts out of your house while still letting them know that they're remembered. There are rituals to riding the bone horses and rounding up the ghosts and making sure they went back to where they came from after 3 days. And in particular, I liked there was a contrast between the white, like a colour contrast between the white of the ghosts and the bone horses and the red of the flowers and the ribbons and such, the colour that was used to control them. So I really liked that about that story. The third story I read was The Blood That Pulses in the Veins of One by J.Y. Young. It was very visceral. It was a story about an alien who was being basically dissected alive, and that was, yeah, I kind of ended up blanking that story out a bit. It was a bit too much for me. And then finally I read You'll Surely Drown Here If You Stay by Alisa Wong. This was an uncomfortable story. It was sort of a western with like desert spirits and the dead being raised and like were-coyote type stuff. But what made it really uncomfortable was that it was partially set in a brothel with these two youngsters who worked at the brothel, and there was some very uncomfortable kind of sexual stuff sort of touched on. So I wasn't particularly fond of that story either. But yeah, so that was everything that I read for the Jewish 24-hour readathon this October. I'm really pleased at how much I got read. So there's a couple more things ticked off my TBR. And yeah, so hopefully I'll see you soon again, probably next weekend for another video. I haven't decided what that's going to be yet, but I will see you around. So keep reading, and if anyone's read any of the books that I mentioned, let me know what you thought. And yeah, so see ya.